everyone, my name is Josh and this is Whimsical and Interesting Musings. And today I have a book review for you on The Cuckoo's Calling by Robert Galbraith, aka J.K. Rowling. And I absolutely love this book. This book is fantastic. This entire series is just wonderful. I absolutely love the characters of Cormoran Strike and Ellicott. And this is a perfect story to pretty much kickstart their little detective agency investigation adventure. Excuse me. So what's the story behind The Cuckoo's Calling? Well, it follows our two main protagonists of Cormoran Strike and Ellicott, who are assigned to investigate the supposed suicide of a supermodel by the name of Lula Landry. Cormoran Strike is a private detective who was once a veteran in a recent war who lost his leg during battle, but now he's since struggling to come to terms with his finances, and he also is so bad in terms of the financial department that he literally has to live in his office. He has no other means of permanent accommodation. It's that bad for him. And Ellicott is a recently engaged 20-something-year-old who is accidentally assigned to work with Cormoran, and it's through this little mishap that the adventure of a lifetime begins in the form of the Cormoran Strike series. Like I said, the opening of the first book basically involves the death of a supermodel by the name of Lula Landry, who is a character who is in a very interesting position because she is a character who is a very well-known celebrity. She's very well loved and adored by a lot of people, but when she dies, a lot of things start to come up about her past, including her association with people who are kind of not very nice people in the fashion industry, very insane celebrities and all sorts of different people. But she also has a bit of a past in the sense that she herself got involved into drugs and all sorts of other things. But not only on top of that, she is a character who is mixed race, and she has pretty much grown up. She was adopted into an all-white family, and she has since felt a little bit of an identity crisis, and she's wanted to keep in touch with her roots. But sadly, this particular investigation into her past, could it have been the cause of her death? Well, you have to read the rest of the book in order to find out. So, how did Cormoran Strike get the opportunity to solve this case? He basically got it through a childhood friend by the name of John Bristow, who is a childhood friend of theirs who supposedly has connections with him, and he basically takes the case because he has no other cases to pretty much investigate. He's pretty much tight for money, and he needs to take everything that he can get. From there, both him and Ellicott actually have a whale of a time trying to investigate the secrets of the supermodel's past and try to figure out what happened to her and make sure that she has justice for the murder that took place upon her. So this particular book is an interesting next step for J.K. Rowling as a writer, because she is mostly well known for writing the Harry Potter series, and of course when she decided to publish the Casual Vacancy, copies of that book just flew off the shelves just because J.K. Rowling's name was on the cover, and a lot of people read it, and a lot of people felt like, would I have read this book if J.K. Rowling's name wasn't on the cover? And a lot of people would say yes, because J.K. Rowling's name literally encourages so many people to just pick up these books and enjoy them, that it's very hard to actually take a book seriously on the prospect that it's a book or it has good story or good characters. So J.K. Rowling decided to write her next book under a pen name, and I really do like the fact that she was able to do that, because again, it's very hard when you're famous. I know a lot of us kind of joke and say, oh, wouldn't it be lovely to be famous, and wouldn't it be lovely to, be, worshipped by all sorts of people and have, cameras flashing off in your face and go, oh, Mr. So-and-so, over here, and you're like, oh, yeah, hi, how are you, and sign autographs and things like that. Wouldn't it be lovely? But then it would start to get boring after a while. There'd start to be a lot of pressure on you. So it's pretty understandable that, J.K. Rowling would write about this And it's interesting that she writes about a character who is in the fashion industry, which is a industry that I'm not particularly interested in, but I am quite, fascinated to find out about other professions and how, other professions work from an outsider's perspective or from an insider's perspective in the case of it exploring an entire industry. And that's what I really love about this particular book, because I actually read an interview with J.K. Rowling where she said, the best thing about writing about a private detective is they have access to all sorts of things that a regular police officer or a CID or a CSI or whatever their title happens to be. I like the fact that when you're able to use a private detective, you can take them to any other areas you want, and they have access to all sorts of things that not many other police officers would have access to. So that's immediately a very unique perspective on the way a character can investigate a crime. And that's something that J.K. Rowling manages to take full advantage of. And I like this particular book because of how it manages to give such detail into the fashion industry, but also the world of celebrity, which is how literally you just have to say a person's name and immediately they're like, we want to hire this person and all these other things. So I really do like that insight. But I feel like this book is an incredibly engaging mystery all on its own. I mean, this is literally a great murder mystery book if you are wanting to get into the murder mystery genre, because the book has an interesting array of suspects. It doesn't have too much of a complicated plot. Yes, there are some twists and turns, but it doesn't feel like you need a diagram in order to understand who everybody is or where everybody needs to go and what their role in the story is overall. And I absolutely love that about the book. It really does feel like it's an easy read, but it's not too easy to the point where you can solve it in your sleep, or you can, just solve the crime on the first page kind of thing. And that's something that I find really annoying about a lot of people who read mysteries. They say, "Oh, I figured out who the killer was on page 1." And I felt, how could you do that? Like the page is just, the story's just getting up and running. How can someone do that? But I've met people who can actually do that, and I'm actually quite surprised, because I usually have to let something sit with me before I can figure it out. And yeah, I just think that this is one of the things that I really do love about this book, is that it's simple and it's easy to follow, but it doesn't feel like it needs to be overly complicated, nor is it too simple. So it's a perfect gateway crime novel to read, and I really do feel like one of the things that I really do love about this book as well is the characters. The character of Cormoran Strike is probably one of my favourite detectives of all time, because he literally is one of those characters who, for the first time, it seems like in ages, finally we have an author who literally is writing from the point of view of a disabled person, and they're not in the background. They're not just characters who pop in every once in a while and they say that, oh, this character's a well-written disabled person, and they're not portrayed by a disabled actor. If you're talking, they're not portrayed by an able-bodied actor, like in the case of some shows that I've seen. It's really insulting. So yeah, I really do like the fact that J.K. Rowling actually decided to write a disabled character and make their lives not glamorous at all. In fact, they're really a pain in the arse. And I have a little bit of a confession to make. I am disabled. I have cerebral palsy. I've even made reference in my past videos that I have an electric wheelchair in my room, which I use to get out and about every so often to, go to the library or do all sorts of other things. So I go out every so often in my wheelchair, but I really do kind of like the fact that J.K. Rowling seemed to get what it's like to be disabled and what it's like to have difficulty getting up the stairs or having difficulty whenever a lift goes out. It's a really major inconvenience for a lot of able-bodied people, but when you're a person in a wheelchair and that's your only way of getting to somewhere, like say for example if I was to go to the cinema, I wouldn't be able to see the film if the elevator wasn't working. We'd have to go home and do something else because the elevator isn't working or the lift isn't working. So I really do like that aspect. In fact, there's a scene in another book in the series where J.K. Rowling describes a scene where Strike is trying to get into the shower in a hotel room. I think it's a Premier Inn or a Travel Lodge. And she literally describes how much of a struggle it is for him to get in and out of the bath. And I really do like that because I've had issues like that in the past where I've struggled to get in and out of the bath, and I've found it very tough to get my legs over because the midsection of my legs tends to get very, crushed when I'm flipping my legs over, but I have to do it very quickly because otherwise I'm going to have that very uncomfortable sensation. So I really do kind of get what all of that means, and I'm so glad J.K. Rowling, thank you so much for creating a character like Cormoran Strike, a character who's a badass detective, but he isn't a total, mastermind. He doesn't get everything right the first time. He does get injured. He does swear a lot. He does, make mistakes, and he does mess up. And sometimes that actually adds to his relatability, because if your character is too perfect, you kind of don't know how to latch onto them, or if you want to latch onto them at all, and that's absolutely great, and I absolutely love that about this character overall. And I want to talk about Robin Ellicott as well, his assistant, who starts off as a temp in his detective agency. She accidentally gets assigned to work for him in this particular investigation, and she ends up becoming quite a important asset to the overall agency as the series goes on. But I really just love this book. I absolutely adore the characters. I found the mystery quite compelling, and I really just found the overall storyline to be really, really interesting. So this book is fantastic. I would give this a 5 out of 5 star read. It's amazing. It's fantastic. I would absolutely, recommend, if anyone wants to get into a crime fiction novel, but you don't want to read any of the classics because you find them a little bit too challenging, I would definitely recommend The Cuckoo's Calling right off the bat. I think it's a fantastic book. It's well written. It's got a great, protagonist at the heart of it. And the mystery is easy to follow without, it being too complicated. So it manages to tick all those boxes just fine. And I want to talk a little bit about the television adaptation starring Tom Burke and what's her name? Holiday Granger, who play Cuckoo, Cormoran Strike and Robin Ellicott respectively. And I don't know about you, but whenever I either read a new Cormoran Strike book or listen to the audiobook in the case of the more recent one, I kind of find myself, it's very difficult not to imagine Tom Burke or Holiday Granger in those roles, because they feel so perfectly matched to these characters. It's so fantastically done. And I also found that the book really does a great job of character. I really like the fact that, all the characters have, elements of relatability. They don't feel like stereotypes. They don't feel like, they're just cardboard cutout characters. J.K. Rowling is really good with character in her stories, and I really do like the fact that she manages to make every character in this feel like a real person, even though they are just a line of suspects a lot of the time. And even the murder victim, who could just be a character who immediately has her name slandered and she has a bit of a seedy past, they actually try to make her feel a little bit more human, and she actually has really human qualities. Like, she cares about people, and she really donates a lot to charities. And she is a character she comes from a mixed race family. She grew up in a very white household, and she wants to get in touch with her roots. And it turns out to be one of the occasions where it actually ends up leading to her dying, because apparently someone who she's related to, I think it was a cousin of hers, is seen leaving the house with a blazer that looks very similar to the blazer that the killer wore. And is this person that she was meant to have this fateful connection with actually meant to be the killer, or was it someone else? And I really do like that about it, because it really does add an extra layer of tragedy to the entire story, and it really did make me feel sad. And I really do like that J.K. Rowling actually made you care about the victim as well, because usually the victims are just names in a lot of mysteries, and even the mysteries that I love, they do tend to treat a lot of the victims like they're just names on a newspaper, or they're just faces in an obituary, and J.K. Rowling didn't do that, and I really do like that about this particular book. She reminded me a little bit of Ruth Rendell in regards to how she treats characters, especially the characters who would just be the villains in her stories. They really do kind of feel like they have an actual motive or an actual real human motivation behind the things that they do. And sometimes they're just pure evil, but there is some element of humanity in their evil. And that's actually quite a very hard thing to pull off. And J.K. Rowling does it tremendously well. So I would highly give this book a 5 out of 5 stars. And that's all I'm going to say about this book. You have to read the rest for yourself in order to find out what happens. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. And I've been Josh with Whimsical and Interesting Musings. I hope you're all having a very good day. Take care and bye-bye for now.